They criticized him, underestimated him, wrote him off. Just a few seasons ago, they claimed he didn't have the physique to compete, that he was a functional player, useful but never decisive. They tried to transfer him, sent him to the bench, tried to sell him. Yet football, that harsh judge, has a long memory for those who refuse to give up. And today, in the heart of the 25-26 season, while Barcelona rebuilds its identity, there is one name that never fails. One who leads, one who shows up when the crest weighs heavy. Under Hansi Flick, Raphinha has become a Barça icon, a tireless warrior, a predator in the box, a killer. A footballer who lives for big matches. And if there's one victim that knows that fire well, it's Real Madrid. In the last 6 Clásicos, Raphinha won 5. 7 goals, direct blows to white history. The most recent came in the Spanish Super Cup final, Barcelona 3, Real Madrid 2. A brace from the Brazilian and a dominance that left no doubt. Madrid ran, resisted, and fell. And there was Raphinha, the Blaugrana axis, the captain, the best Brazilian player in the world right now. But to understand how Raphinha became one of Barca's most decisive wingers, it's not enough to look at his recent goals or his clutch assists. You have to go back in time, return to the past, to where it all began. Let's begin. Raphinha was born in Porto Alegre, in the south of Brazil, but not in the postcard version the world knows. He didn't grow up surrounded by beaches, stadiums, or modern academies. He grew up in Restinga, a neighborhood where poverty isn't a concept, it's the landscape. Unpaved streets, houses built by hand, and dust that sticks to your skin. There, where the future often ends before it begins, football wasn't a romantic dream, it was a way out. Sometimes, the only one. As a child, he played on fields that weren't really fields. Cracked dirt lots, with no lines, no nets, no referees. Some days the ball was an old, worn-out soccer ball. Other days, a crushed bottle. The sun beat down relentlessly, and dust rose with every sprint. In the distance, shouts of goal blended with sounds no child should ever hear. Sirens, arguments, gunshots. That was his normal. Raphinha played barefoot, with injured feet, scraped knees, a body exhausted before it had time to grow. Not for fun, not for applause. He played because he had no other choice. In his neighborhood, football wasn't a game, it was a way to stay safe, to avoid falling into the path so many of his friends eventually took. While some were lost to drugs or gangs, he clung to the ball like a lifeline. In Restinga, he learned something no football school can teach. He learned how to endure, how to get back up without anyone applauding, how to keep running even when his legs had nothing left. Because there, if you gave up, no one was coming to save you. And without realizing it, on those dirt fields amid dust, blows, and silence, the character that would later sustain his career began to form. Before becoming a footballer, Raphinha learned how to survive. When everything seemed to fade, when rejection weighed heavier than hope, someone finally discovered him. It wasn't in a packed stadium or under television cameras, but on a forgotten pitch in Brazil, where no one goes looking for stars. That someone was Deco, former Barça and Chelsea player, a man who understood football and the streets. Deco wasn't looking for perfect bodies or inflated numbers. He was looking for truth. A few minutes were enough to see it, how he moved, how he protected the ball, how he attacked every space as if it were the last. It didn't matter that he was skinny or unknown. He understood what others had ignored. That kid had something different. For the first time, someone didn't shut the door on him. Deco signed him and gave him a real opportunity. Shortly after came the call that could change everything. Vitória de Guimarães, Portugal, Europe. The impossible dream was starting to take shape. For Raphinha, it wasn't just a transfer, it was an escape from the neighborhood, from a destiny he had already seen consume too many. But arriving didn't mean being ready. He landed in a new country, without the language, without family, without friends. He went from the noise of dirt fields to the cold silence of European training grounds. Everything was different, the pace, the demands, the pressure. And just as he was beginning to adapt, the blow came: a injury, weeks out, lost time. When he returned, no one was waiting for him. The coach no longer counted on him. He wasn't in the starting 11, not even on the bench. He trained alone, on an empty field, without lights or applause. There, far from home, he faced the same question as always: keep going or give up. He trained alone, in the rain, on empty fields. No eyes watching, no corrections, no encouragement. Every day was a test of mental endurance. Football, far from home and without family, began to hurt more than ever. One night, he couldn't take it anymore. He called his mother. A trembling voice, broken words. He wanted to come back. He felt like everything had been for nothing. Her answer wasn't comfort, it was truth. His mother didn't promise miracles. She told him something hard: if you give up, come back. But if you do, be ready to work at whatever you can find, because there's no place here for people who quit. It wasn't a hug, it was a direct blow to his pride. That night, he hit rock bottom. That was the abyss, because giving up was no longer just abandoning a dream, it was accepting that the entire journey had meant nothing. And the next day, with no guarantees and no minutes promised, he returned to the field. Not because he expected to be saved, but because he understood something essential. If he was going to fall, it wouldn't be without a fight. There, under the rain and in silence, his true rebirth began, not with goals or headlines, but with a quiet decision that would change his story forever. After hitting rock bottom and getting back up in silence, Raphinha was no longer the same. He had learned something that isn't taught in training sessions: how to compete without guarantees, how to rely on no one's confidence but his own. And when football opened a door for him again, this time he was ready to walk through it. In 2018, he arrived at Sporting Lisbon, a big, heavy club, rich in history, the same one that developed Cristiano Ronaldo, Figo, and Nani. This was no longer a leap of faith, it was a real test. Wearing green didn't mean being a starter. It meant competing every day, training under constant pressure, and understanding that at a club like that, if you don't perform, you disappear. Raphinha had to adapt quickly. Coaching changes, injuries, fierce competition for places. It wasn't a perfect season, but it was a formative one. He learned to play in tighter spaces, to make better decisions, to choose when to accelerate and when to slow things down. The numbers didn't tell the whole story, but the impact did. 4 goals, 4 assists, and a presence in the biggest moments. 2 team trophies, the Taça da Liga and the Taça de Portugal. And in a final decided by penalties, when the stadium fell silent and legs feel heavier than ever, Raphinha didn't hide. He stepped up, took his penalty, and scored it. Because if there was one thing he had learned in the neighborhood, in Europe, and in solitude, it was how to show up when fear paralyzes others. That spell in Portugal didn't make him famous, but it made him complete, and football, which is always watching, took note. In 2019 came the first major transfer of his career. Rennes in France made a bold move, 21 million euros, a club record. He was no longer a South American prospect, he was an investment, and with that came another kind of pressure. French football is physical, fast, demanding. Many doubted him, but Raphinha didn't take long to respond. From day one, he fit right in. 8 goals, 7 assists, and constant influence in the attacking game. He didn't just create chances, he worked, pressed, led. He was one of the key pieces behind Rennes achieving something historic, qualifying for the Champions League for the first time ever. His farewell was a statement of intent. Final match, a goal, an assist, and a standing ovation from the entire. When Raphinha arrived in England, few looked at him with respect. To many, he was just another Brazilian coming from Rennes, a minor signing for a newly promoted club. But Marcelo Bielsa didn't see ordinary players, he saw pieces of a system. And in Raphinha, he found something you can't buy: character. Leeds United had returned to the Premier League after 16 years of hell in the second division. The pressure was brutal, the demands relentless. In that environment, Raphinha didn't arrive with flash or headlines, he arrived hungry. From the very first training session, Bielsa understood that his intensity fit perfectly into a style built on pressing, speed, and sacrifice. In his first season, 6 goals and 9 assists were enough for the league to start raising an eyebrow. But beyond the numbers, what set him apart was his attitude. He threw himself to the ground to win back balls, ran until the final minute, pressed as if every play were the last. He played with Brazilian joy and English grit. Leeds wasn't a giant, but it competed like one, and at the heart of that team was him. The second season was the ultimate test. The club was on the brink of relegation, everything on the line in the final match. The stadium fell silent, a penalty that meant saving Leeds or condemning them. Raphinha took the ball, took a breath, and buried it in the back of the net. Goal. Survival. Legend. That moment wasn't just a goal, it was a declaration of identity. The kid who had once been rejected in Brazil was now carrying the weight of a historic club on his shoulders. That penalty changed him. He was no longer a prospect, he was a leader. The Premier League began to respect him, and the big clubs started to look at him differently. Raphinha had proven that he didn't just have talent, he had character. And in England, where football shows no mercy, that matters more than any number. In the summer of 2022, Raphinha walked through the door he had imagined since childhood, signing for football club Barcelona. It wasn't just a multi-million-dollar contract, it was the club he had watched on television while playing barefoot in the streets of Porto Alegre, the Barça of Ronaldinho, of Neymar, of Messi. The dream was right in front of him. But the Barcelona that welcomed him was not the one of magical Champions League nights. It was a club battered by financial crisis, struggling to register players, filled with internal doubts and a press that showed no mercy. Raphinha arrived without a fixed squad number, in the middle of an atmosphere heavy with uncertainty. On the pitch, the reality was even harsher. Xavi Hernandez used him glued to the right touchline, limited to stretching the field and taking on defenders in one-on-one duels. But that wasn't Raphinha. His football was about movement, diagonal runs, high pressing, surprise attacks through the middle. Trapped in a system that suffocated him, the reduced minutes began, the early substitutions, the criticism. He does his job, but he doesn't dazzle, they said. He's not indispensable. The fan base began to doubt. The media spoke of a possible sale, and then Lamine Yamal appeared, the 16-year-old prodigy dazzling the world. Raphinha was pushed over to the left wing, an uncomfortable position where he never felt fully himself. In an honest interview, he let slip what he had been holding in for a long time. Sometimes I feel like I do everything right and still get taken off. Other times I try too hard and nothing works. The Barca dream was turning into a silent nightmare. The player who had arrived full of hope was now being labelled a failed signing. Transfer rumours grew, criticism multiplied, and the silence of the locker room weighed heavier than any defeat. But Raphinha is not the kind who gives up. He had proven that before, and even though the crest burned and the shirt felt heavy, he chose to stay quiet and work. Because at Barca, as in life, arriving doesn't mean succeeding. The summer of 2024 was an earthquake in Barcelona. The board decided to sack Xavi Hernandez, a symbol of the club but unable to find the formula to return the team to the elite. The arrival of Hansi Flick, the German coach who had conquered the sextuple with Bayern, generated excitement and doubt at the same time. Many believed Flick wouldn't count on Raphinha, that he would see him as a secondary player, expendable in a project that needed to be rebuilt from scratch. But the surprise came in the very first conversation. Flick looked him straight in the eye and said, "You are a fundamental part of my plan. I'm counting on you 100%. That sentence was a jolt of confidence, a rebirth. The player who had been sidelined and questioned was now a key piece on the new coach's board. The transformation began on the training ground. Flick didn't chain him to the wing, didn't limit him to individual duels. He gave him freedom to move between the lines, attack spaces, press high, connect with the midfielders. He let him be himself, and the impact was immediate. In the first 16 matches of the season, Raphinha racked up 12 goals and 10 assists. It wasn't just statistics, it was total influence. Every attack ran through his feet. Every press started with his energy. He no longer played with anxiety or fear of being substituted. He played with control, with maturity. Fewer dribbles, but more effective ones. His touches became surgical. His football grew more cerebral, more complete. He stopped being the electric winger and became a leader, a reference point, the engine of the team. The fans who once doubted him began to chant his name. The critics who had called him a useful player ran out of arguments. Flick summed it up in a press conference. When you let players be themselves, football flows. And in that Barca searching for an identity, Raphinha became the heart. The kid who had arrived without a fixed squad number was now Barcelona's offensive engine. His metamorphosis wasn't accidental, it was the result of trust, freedom, and character. Under Flick, Raphinha stopped being a promise and became a symbol. The Champions League has always been the stage where the good are separated from the immortal. For Barcelona, it meant redemption. For Raphinha, it was the chance to prove that his journey from Restinga to the Camp Nou hadn't been accidental. The opponent was Bayern Munich, the same one that years earlier had humiliated Barca and left deep scars. That night, the stadium pulsed with tension, but Raphinha didn't arrive as a victim, he arrived as captain. The armband on his arm wasn't symbolic. It was recognition of a true leader, the player who had carried the team through its darkest moments. And then came what few dare to dream, a hat-trick in the most important match of the year. Each goal was different, each finish a message. The first pure speed, leaving defenders behind like shadows. The second intelligence and movement, appearing in the exact place at the exact second. The third absolute composure, a surgical strike that sealed the win and qualification. It wasn't just a goal-scoring exhibition, it was a demonstration of character. Raphinha pressed, organized, corrected, lifted the team when legs felt heavy. His influence was everywhere, in attack, in defense, in the energy he transmitted. That night, he wasn't just a player, he was a leader, a symbol. The Camp Nou ovation thundered like few others. Commentators called it the performance of his life. But for him, it was more than that. It was confirmation that everything he had endured, rejection, injuries, criticism, solitude had meaning. The kid who once trained alone in the rain was now Barca's captain and the protagonist of a historic European night. That hat-trick didn't stay in the statistics, it stayed in the collective memory. It was the moment Raphinha stopped being simply a brilliant winger and became a myth. The Champions League crowned him, the armband legitimized him, and his absolute leadership elevated him to a place reserved for those who never give up. If the Champions League crowned him as captain, the Clásicos against Real Madrid turned him into an executioner. The rivalry with Los Blancos became the stage where Raphinha stopped being a good player and became a tormentor. The 2024-2025 season marked the beginning of that metamorphosis. In October, at the Santiago Bernabeu, he delivered an unforgettable performance, a goal, an assist, and relentless pressing that dismantled Madrid. Barca won 0-4, and he was the absolute protagonist. From that moment on, every Clásico became his territory. In the Spanish Super Cup, played in Saudi Arabia, he punished the eternal rival once again. 2 goals in a final that ended 5-2 and restored Barca's sense of superiority. Mbappé had scored early for Madrid, but Raphinha responded with authority. He was named man of the match, a symbol that his fire against Los Blancos was more alive than ever. The story continued in the Copa del Rey final against Madrid, a match filled with maximum tension. Raphinha neither scored nor assisted, but his influence was decisive. He pressed, dragged defenders, opened spaces. His relentless work allowed the team to come back, and Koundé in the final seconds sealed the winning goal. Barca lifted the trophy, humiliated Madrid once again, and although his name didn't appear on the stat sheet, everyone knew he had been key in that battle. But the definitive blow came in the League Clásico, an epic 4-3 at Montjuic. Madrid arrived angry, thirsty for revenge after losing the previous 3 Clásicos, and Barca needed the win to make a statement. Madrid opened the scoring with 2 goals from Mbappé, silencing the crowd, but Raphinha scored twice, both at critical moments, and the second was the one that broke the match, ignited the stadium, and left Madrid without an answer. That victory didn't just bring 3 points, it was the decisive step toward the league title. Barca finished as champions, and Raphinha was marked as the man who tipped the balance in the greatest rivalry in the world. But it didn't end there. Raphinha wanted more. So the 2025-2026 season began as a continuation of the dream. He arrived flying, his confidence intact after a historic year. Flick had rebuilt the system around his energy, his pressing, and his brutal reading of the game. The opening matches confirmed the inevitable. Another massive season. But football always has its tests. On match day 7, a muscle injury sidelined him for several weeks. Without him, Barca wobbled. The team lost fluidity, the press fell apart, Yamal became isolated, and Lewandowski was left without clean service. The press began to whisper, was Raphinha more important than we thought? And then he returned. Not at 100%, not perfect, but with the same fire as always. His comeback changed the dynamic. The connection with Yamal reignited, forming a duo that blended pure talent with tactical intelligence. Raphinha was no longer just dribbling and speed, now he guided, organized, corrected. Flick knew it and gave him even more creative responsibility. The confirmation came in the 2026 Super Cup in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Against Madrid, Raphinha was once again the executioner. He scored 2 goals, sealed the match with tireless effort, and lifted the trophy with Barça. He was named man of the match, cementing his role as Madrid's nightmare. Today, while Barcelona searches for its best collective version, he has already found his own. He scores again, assists again, shows up again when others hide. Because some need a perfect team to shine. Raphinha doesn't. Raphinha shines even when the team doesn't. The truth is simple. No one gets far without walking through fire. Raphinha's journey cannot be explained by coincidence. It wasn't luck, it wasn't a fortunate break, it was consequence. The consequence of every rejection turned into fuel, every lonely training session in the rain, every blow he chose to transform into strength. His story is pure resistance. The skinny kid who wasn't good enough, the player who trained with no one watching, the footballer who refused to give up when everything pushed him toward the abyss. Today, at Barcelona, his name is not just statistics or trophies, it is a symbol, it is character. It is proof that talent without courage fades away, but courage without talent can change destinies. Raphinha didn't get here because the path was easy, but because he never stopped moving forward, even when every step felt impossible. From Porto Alegre to the Camp Nou, from the streets of Restinga to Champions League nights, from rejection to respect, Raphinha is not coincidence. Raphinha is consequence. And if you want to keep discovering stories like this, like the video, subscribe to Barça Leyendas and turn on notifications. Because here we don't just talk about football, we tell the stories of how those who were underestimated ended up becoming indispensable.